So there's these AI verification videos going around where you have like an AI generated girl and she's moving around with this verification data, and a lot of people have been going crazy wondering how to do them. In this video, I'm going to show you how to generate videos that look like this. Pretty easy to do. It generally just goes, you generate a photorealistic image and then you use a video generator taking the image as an input to animate the image. The video generator ends up being one of the online video generators. You don't need to download anything in order to use this video. In fact, you can do all of this online with no prior anything. Though I will also be showing you how to generate the images offline as well, which would increase the quality since you have more control over the offline image generation versus the online image generators in them. Okay, so first I'm going to be showing the online route where you generate the image using an online image generator. There's a bunch of different Flux online image generators. Flux right now is probably the best, at least openly available, realistic AI image generator. There's a bunch of free different places that you can go to be able to generate Flux. In this video, we're going to be using Flux Pro Art. With these, since we're trying to do this for free, each of these sites that I list here, they have some kind of credit system or some sort of limit system or whatever for how many images you could generate. The easy way to just do this is you generate on one site. If you run out of credits, you could try to use any of the other ones until you get whatever it is that you want. On this site here, I think it's the most amount of images you get, and your credits reset every single day. So this is the one we're going to be using here. So we're just going to quickly be going through the settings here. The first part is we're going to set the aspect ratio to 16:9. The reason why we're going to set the aspect ratio to 16:9, one of the video generators we're going to use, and the best one we're going to be using in the video, only accepts images in a 16:9 orientation. If you generate a long image like this, like a 9:16 image for example, you're going to have to crop the image in. Another reason you want to do this is that when you generate square images, they generally actually have worse quality, since usually photos tend to be a little bit longer or a little bit taller, like good quality photos anyway, whereas square images tend to be worse quality. So you generally want to not generate squares because generating non-squares tend to be better quality. I actually talk about this a lot in my video where I generate realistic images using Flux. But like, yeah, we have here the safety of the image. We set it to explicit. Keep in mind, this doesn't mean you're going to generate explicit images, okay? It just means you're going to have the least amount of restriction on the model. With this, we're using an online version of Flux. There's like multiple versions of Flux, right? There's Flux Schnell, Flux Dev, and Flux Pro. Flux Schnell and Dev are available for offline generation, but Flux Pro is like a different model that only is available via an API. That is the largest version of the Flux model, and the versions that you use offline, the Flux versions, are actually a distilled version of the model. We're going to set the steps are about 30 here, and we're going to reduce the guidance to 2. Also set the number of images to 4 here as well. We have our prompt here, but we're not going to go through the entire prompt, but we are going to focus on some parts of the prompt. So the important part of the prompt, the verification part of the prompt, holding a small crumpled card. You could say holding a sign. We're going to say holding a crumpled sign or a crumpled card. The reason why we're saying that is we want to make the card more interesting than just a flat piece of paper. This makes the image look more realistic. Holding a small crumpled card with one hand. Typically, there's a lot of these images where someone is holding an image like this, holding a sign like this. We're having her hold it with one hand, because again, that makes it more interesting, makes it look more realistic. And this is how you want to be thinking about this. I talk about stuff like this in my photorealistic Flux video, but this is the sort of thing that you want to be doing. And waving with the other hand. This important, waving with the other hand is also important because of the bias to generate holding sign images like this. If the other hand isn't doing something, then they'll still end up holding the sign like this, right? So you actually want to do something with the other hand. The card is written with a red marker that says, so we have red marker. Generally, if you don't say anything, you'll get black text. You get like black writing. It won't look as good. Markers tend to be more textured. You have like more realistic looking things, since marker tends to not look like clean lines and it tends to have these imperfections. That's why we're using marker as opposed to not specifying something. That's why we're saying this here. And typically with these prompts, you want to say holding a so-and-so da 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 da. That says, that's usually how you want to do it. And then whatever you want on the sign, you want to insert it in quotes like this, where I have quote here, quote here, and you write whatever you want on the sign in quote. So here I have verification, TingTingin, well, verification semicolon, TingTingin, new line, and then September the 6th, 2024. This is important here. One of the things that's different about Flux versus most other AI models, it actually respects capitalization and new lines. Meaning that if I have TingTingin with the 2 capitalized T's, which is the correct way to spell TingTingin in case you're wondering by the way, and then I have a new line here, if I were using like Stable Diffusion or any other clip-based model that doesn't use a separate text encoder, it would ignore this. The new line doesn't exist as far as clip is concerned. With Flux, it does appreciate this. So you actually get to separate the text because it appreciates the fact that it's a new line. And same with the capitalizations, where you have the capital S for September, the other parts of the prompt here as well. But again, you take this, you have verification, semicolon, TingTingin with the 2 capitals, and then you have September 6th, 2024, and quotes on both sides. And you need to have it in quotes, by the way. You need to do this. If you don't do this, your mileage may vary, but make sure it's in quotes, okay? And then the other parts of the prompt that we're going to focus on here that are just interesting, we have the image is grainy. This is just here because generally when you're trying to make images look more realistic, people tend to think things in the sense of more realistic sounding terms or more realistic sounding things settings are not necessarily what looks real when you look at it. Realistic images tend to have imperfections, not perfections. You understand? So adding something like the image is grainy actually makes the image look more real, since real images tend to be grainy. You understand? That's why we have this part of the prompt. The lighting is dark and it's shot at night. This is to make the image more interesting, to make it shot at night as opposed to in the middle of the day or something like that. And the other part that's interesting here, we have the room is cluttered with clothes strewn across the bed and an unmade blanket. This is the back of the image. We want to add interesting elements to the image again, so it's not just like some empty, desolate, boring looking room. I'm only focusing on parts of the prompt here since the rest of the prompt is actually irrelevant. The important part is you understand how to make the person hold something, and you understand how to make the image look good, and that's dependent on the prompt and the settings. So that's why we're only focusing on, I'm not going to focus on the individualized settings. After you sorted this out, you have your prompt, you have your tenets that make an image realistic. Again, if you're struggling, I have a video that I released, the last video I think I uploaded, on how to generate realistic images using Flux. That uses the offline version of Flux, not the online version, but still. You do this, and then you generate images, and then you can go through like your list of images and do this several times, trying to see if you get something that looks good, that looks realistic, that you want to use. If for some reason you run out of credit on Flux Pro Art, you can try any of the other sites as I mentioned, and basically you do this over and over until you get a few images. Now I'm going to show you how to do this with the offline version of Flux, and this is important because this way you actually get a higher quality image. Even if you generate an image with the online version, you can also use the offline version to improve the quality of the online image. With this, we're using Comfy UI. If you don't have Comfy UI installed, I have a video on how to install Comfy UI and how to use Flux with Comfy UI. We're using Flux Dev, the largest local version of the model that you can use, and a traditional Flux setup here, nothing too interesting. Okay? But then we go over here. The important part is we have the Flux guidance node. This is how we set guidance in the offline version. Keep in mind, there's a slight difference between the Flux guidance on the offline version versus the online version. I'm not going to go too much into that, but still, we're going to set it to 2 here. Other parts that are important with the offline version is that we want to change the sampler. You don't have access to this on the online version, but you do have access on the offline version. We want to change the sampler here to the dice sampler, the D sampler. This works better when you reduce the guidance of the model. It tends to oversaturate the image if you don't reduce the guidance, by the way. Because when you reduce the guidance, it undersaturates the image, but then you add these and it resaturates the image, okay? So it makes it look better. Reducing the guidance makes the image look more realistic, but reduces the saturation. But then this increases the saturation again and makes it look realistic and more saturated, okay? And then you want to set the scheduler to DDIM uniform. Keep in mind, you have to change the scheduler. The other schedulers tend to give weird results with these, so you have to make sure to change the scheduler, by the way. Also, increase the step count as well, since this tends to respond better. In general, once you reduce the guidance, you actually want to increase the steps. I don't set the aspect ratio here actually to 16:9. I actually set it to 1024:768. Okay, yeah, so you set these settings. The offline version and your online version is the same thing. If you're using this, it means you know how to install Comfy UI, so I'm not going to explain how to use Comfy UI. And you generate images, again, until you get images that line up with whatever it is that you want. The important part to add to the pizzazz here, and I talk about this in my generating realistic images with Flux video, but when you use the ultimate SD upscaler, it tends to increase the quality of the image by a decent amount with Flux. I also use this upscaler here, which is the 4x FaceUp.pth. You can get this on OpenModelDB. Yeah, this model tends to increase the amount of noise in the image. Even though noise tends to be something people want to remove from images, noise tends to make images look more real. This is under the same purview of making images grainy that I described earlier in the video, which is why this model tends to be good at making the images look real, okay? The settings you need to have here, you need to make sure your CFG is set to 1. This is important, by the way. If it's not set to 1, the image is going to look like garbage, okay? So make sure it's set to 1. The steps, you can set it to 20. You don't have to set it higher. In fact, I think when you set it high, you actually end up with problems. So just leave it at a low step amount. Around here seems to be good. You have Euler, normal. I don't think you have to change anything else. The idea would be that you take your image, whatever you generate, and you run it through the SD Ultimate Upscaler, okay? You can have it be at the end of the pipeline like this. Or you could just take a load image node, add it in here, and just drop your image into this and then run it with the SD Ultimate Upscale here. Once you do that, you could see the difference between the generated image that comes out of Flux normally and then the upscaled version of the image. You could see the differences here. All right, great. Once you have all the images, the next part is to use the video generators. As of right now, in terms of the big, good video generators, you have Luma, you have Runway, and you have Kling. So let's just start with Kling, because Kling is kind of just garbage. Remember, I said I'm going to do everything in this video for free. With Kling, the free plan is kind of terrible. Like you'll see here that I have an image here that says like processing. How long has this video been processing? How long have you had it? Saying maybe a few minutes, maybe a few hours. No, you'd be wrong. This has been processing for a few days. When you try to use Kling, it's extremely hit or miss. You kind of put images in and it seems to take forever. I think that the free plan is kind of just non-functional and they really just want you to pay for the professional version of the plan. Again, I'm only testing the free version in this video, so I don't know how much better the paid version is, but I can tell you that the free version is practically just it's non-existent. And the one video I was able to generate was from this image and I got this video. And this, keep in mind, this video that I'm going to show you, it took days to generate, okay? It's not like the model takes that long to generate. It's just that it puts you in a queue and you have to wait very long on the free plan. This is a video I got. Again, obviously not very good. The text immediately just erodes. It doesn't look correct. The only thing I would say, one of the interesting things I've noticed about Kling is that it tends to have better human interaction. They tend to have better movements and they tend to blink and move around a little bit more. And it tends to be a bit interesting there. But other than that, the free version of Kling is just terrible. So the other two versions of models that exist in the video are Runway and Luma Dream Machine. And spoiler, Runway ML is basically the best model in the video. But first, we're going to address Luma Dream Machine. With Luma, as for functionality, it's relatively simple. You basically take your image. You can click here to add, or you can drop the image onto this bar here. We're going to be dropping the image since that tends to be easier. You just drop the image here. And it'll pop up here. And then you simply add whatever prompt it is that you want. So if you want woman sitting down, laughing or something, you can add something like that. This is not going to get into prompting as much since when it comes to video models, the prompt is kind of a suggestion for the most part, okay? There are some general tips where you usually want to prompt for some kind of interesting thing, like make the person do an action like smile or blink or something like that. But honestly, guys, it's kind of hit or miss from a prompting perspective. Generally, prompt whatever you believe is the most logical, sensible thing. And I think prompting is kind of all over the place when it comes to these things, okay? Because you're controlling not just for one frame, but several frames and how they connect with each other. It's actually a lot of stuff to consider. But yeah, this is simply what you would want. You take your image, you do this, and then you simply generate here. So I generated a few videos with Luma, and I'd say the best one that I got was this video here. Well, we have the girl here, but there's a few big issues. The sign starts to wiggle a lot. It just wiggles around a lot. It should be like a stable sign. And it's telling that the only video that seemingly was like the best one was the one where there was not much movement. A woman in a bedroom holding a card waving at the camera. The prompts for this don't have to be complicated, by the way. They just tend to be simple, and the prompts aren't as important when it comes to this stuff, considering that you have so little control when it comes to videos. It tends to be hard to really steer things in the direction that you want. But a general result you would get are things like this, where her hand tends to be super like wavy here, and the whole image just looks a bit off. There's also this one as well, which tends to be similar. Her fingers look kind of weird, and she's kind of moonwalking through the video. And then those were like the better images. There's also this image here, which this one also looked a little bit good. Keep in mind, the sign in this one is messed up, but that's because the original image, the sign was bad, right? So Luma didn't mess that up. The original image that I put into it was already messed up. But I'd say this one looks kind of realistic. You know, the camera pans around. It does kind of mess up at the end there, but this is a better image. But that, for the most part, is the best you could really get out of Luma. The other videos were just way worse. Okay, so we have this one where we have this image and it turned into this video. In general, one of the big things I noticed with Luma is it was just absolutely terrible at a bunch of people. It seemed to just not be able to track them appropriately, and everything would just break down. So you can see this here, it just completely breaks. The person just doesn't look real at all. Another one is this, where the same thing happens here, where the person just completely is destroyed and it doesn't work. It doesn't work as well. Same thing. Another image is this one. With this one, I tried something different. I tried having no prompt in the image. I just put the image in and I attached no prompt to the image. The reason why I did that is on Runway, that seemed to increase the quality of the image. However, on Luma, it seemed like the image, they didn't really know what to do, and it simply just kind of pans away from the person here. So yeah. And then we had this other one here. This is the prompted version of that image. Oh, one interesting thing I forgot to mention about Luma is that Luma can actually accept images that aren't 16:9, can accept images of any resolution. It's Runway ML, the best model in the video, that actually can only accept 16:9 images. And maybe one of the better videos in the thing was this one. We have this person in a car here. They're driving around. I mentioned this since the Runway version of this image tended to struggle, and Runway tended to have a hard time working with this image. So that's why I'm mentioning it. Moving on to Runway, which is like the best video generator. It's largely the same thing. You take your image, you drag it onto the field. The important distinction though between Runway and Luma is you have to crop your image to 16:9. But you were watching my video and you made sure to generate your images at 16:9 or very close to 16:9. So you should have no issue right now. And you enter in your prompt and then you hit generate. And again, this is using the free version of the model. I think with Runway, they kind of stingy with the tokens. You literally get, I think, about 2 generations. Okay, 2 2 generations. It seems that the best way with Runway is actually to use no prompt. So the first image that we have, you can see here the immediate difference here, where the person is more realistically blinking around, nodding. They hold on to the sign. The sign doesn't weirdly creak and moan. Her hand is a little bit awkwardly doing this, but it seems believable that somebody could kind of like awkwardly wave like this as they pose for a picture, not sure when the photographer is going to tell them to stop, you know? It seems it's realistically awkward. You know what I mean? The best kind of awkward. This other video here is a similar result. A little bit less, you know, fidgety, a little bit more kind of like emotive a little bit here. Again, same thing with this one. But for me, the one that seemingly was the most realistic was when I didn't use a prompt. Keep in mind, there is a problem with this one, but I'll show you. But this one seemingly resulted in the most realistic looking image to me, which is this one here. Again, obviously, she pulls out a sign from the shadow realm, okay? She has access to the 4th dimension, and in this world, apparently, this is something that you can do. But you see that the way she emotes, her hands, her motions, the fact that she looks over then looks back at the camera, it's way more realistic than all of the other generations IMO. I vol und, famous German saying. The text looks good, everything looks good in this image. And this is without prompt. I think the safe thing to do, if you're going to be using Runway, is to not use a prompt. Largely because, remember, you only get 2 generations for free. And Runway, the paid plan is expensive. Okay, so I think that if you're using a 2 free generations, no prompt seems to be the best strategy, okay? The only reason I was able to generate this much, by the way, for free, is because I had a Runway account back when they just launched the site. And I had a bunch of credits from way early on when they just launched the site. There were also some failures, though, with this. And I thought they were hilarious. So we have this one. Looks fine enough, right? And then we have this, where the sign just fades and then disappears, okay? And you know the hilarious part about this is the sign seemingly realistically defied the laws of physics, and it realistically just popped out of existence. You know what I mean? It's so good. It's even when it defies the laws of physics, it still looks realistic, okay? This prompt involved the person dancing. What I was looking for was maybe something like where they hold a sign and they dance around. I was just trying to make the image look more dynamic, and seemingly it caused problems, okay? But this was interesting, but the other one was scary. And now we have the same thing where we have a dancing person, okay? And we have this. And then, yeah, now she moves her hand away, and her 3rd arm, again, from the 4th dimension, since we know she has access to the 4th dimension, she pulls out this hand, and we end up with like some like AI horror-esque thing where now the hand just comes in, grabs the sign, and then the funny part is it realistically bobs up and down. The sign actually looks like it's realistically being held up. I mean, look at this, guys. Look at this. Like, what the? Ah, God, Jesus Christ. Even when it fails, it wins, guys. Now, we could look at the party images, which just completely failed on Luma, okay? The parties just failed. And keep in mind, on Runway, there were problems as well, but it definitely wasn't as problematic, okay? So let me show you here. The problem we have with Runway is immediately the skin tones of all the characters just get way too shiny. But the actual realism of the image, the people in the background, how they're dancing, this looks really good, really good. But it's just the skin tones that end up looking a bit off. Like the actual contrast of the image kind of looks a bit off. There's another one, same image. Again, same thing with the skin tones, but we have more realistic dancing as well, with the people in the background where they're realistically dancing. Looks pretty nice. The other dance-based image, this one, we have some weird things here where the people start pulling out cards. And her head just doesn't adequately shrink to match the changing size here. And then same thing with this one, where again, her head's more adequately positioned. And people are dancing in slow-mo now. But again, looks quite nice, with the exception of the random floating cards. With this one, it shows like one of the things where it can sometimes mess up with consistency of people's like faces, but you can fix this. So we have this image, and it comes in, and you see here, her face just changes. It just changes halfway through the video. But the thing is, it looks weird, and keep in mind, again, the sign here looks messed up. This is because the original image that I have input in did not have correct text on the sign, okay? But the sign isn't messed. This is how it looked when I gave it to it, right? But if you simply just, if you start the video from here, it looks wrong, right? Because she changes. But if you just start the video like here, if you start it here, that just looks fine. It just looks like a normal video now. So if you're trying to make like one of these verification type videos, you just have to cut out the part where it looks bad. And there you go. The same thing applies to this video. Where same thing, you see? Her face just changes in the in-between. So what you want to do is just start here and then play from this point. Even though she randomly pulls out some thing. Just start playing from this point. Then what we had here were the car videos. And with Luma, I actually said that Luma probably got this better than Runway. And one of the things you noticed with the car videos here was it kept messing up the car. I felt like in this image, for example, here, the car just feels weird. It's moving around. They don't exactly, it seems like they don't know what to do. Like the image doesn't know what to do. Like it doesn't understand that she's adequately in a car and stuff. It just kind of looks a bit weird. A lot of the car videos were like this. Where now we have this here. The thing is moving a little too much. It doesn't look like it's coming from the camera. It just looks like she's bobbing around in like a moving car. Like she's on a boat. I think this one was the most realistic one, where she looked like she might have been holding onto the camera. So it moves, right? But then you see the car like drifting in here randomly. And I think the best one was this last one, where she looks like she's here driving backwards, and it's a little kind of weird. It's a little weird, but it actually looks kind of realistic. If you look around, it looks realistic, you know? Even though she seemingly is in the driver's seat, but somehow the car is moving backwards. Maybe the person's on the other side there, so. Yeah, and she's driving back, and it kind of the cars look fine, this looks fine, so it actually looks decent. Of course, she randomly pulls out a sign here. That doesn't make any sense, but yeah, this one is probably the best one. There's also this video here, actually. This is not related to the verification stuff, but this was just an image that I put in. And in this video, I saw it with this image, and then I told Flux to like add an explosion in the background, right? I just wanted to see what would happen. And this was, did I say told Flux? I told Runway to add a explosion in the background. And this was kind of insane. Okay, this is what made me, I didn't believe in AI video generation. This made me a believer, okay? So yeah, this was what I generated. This is just in passing, okay? So we have this. It realistically animates the person. They like, they have their, you could see the inside of their mouth before you could, like the mouth was closed at the beginning of the image here. So it doesn't actually know what's in their mouth. So it realistically like generates their mouth. And the person like comes in, they fix their hair. The explosion is in the background. Again, there's all kinds of things there that make it an AI-ish image. Like the explosion randomly explodes like fireworks onto the screen, right? Then she has an Apple Watch that disappears. Look at her hand here, right? She has an Apple Watch and it just disappears, okay? So there's still AI-ness, okay? Okay, but still, it was just one of those things. Another one that was impressive, but only impressive for the AI generation chads, okay, is if you look at her arm here, like the video comes in, it blocks her arm. So now, it doesn't know what's behind her arm, okay? It doesn't know anymore. It can't see it, okay? When you come back here, and her tattoos, they're the same. They're the same, okay? So it accurately is able to repeat information that I got access. And keep in mind, this shouldn't be impressive. Technically, it should be able to do this if it could replicate her face and make her look consistent throughout the image. I mean, it has to be able to do stuff like this. But still, with the amount of different video generation software, as soon as something is hidden, the AI forgets it there. It's there. And it reveals again, it's just gone now. This was an interesting little part there. So, obviously, there are failures, but you gotta count the wins too, okay? You can't just count the failures. There's clearly things that are wrong here. Like, but a year from now, we're probably gonna have stuff like this is how I like to think of it, guys. Okay, a year from now, this quality of video generation, we're gonna be able to do that on our own PCs. That's the way to think of it, right? Right now, this is the online, but a year from now, this is gonna be the offline. Because you look at ChatGPT when that came out, people were like, we're never gonna be able to do that. And now, ChatGPT, as it released, you've been able to run ChatGPT on your PC locally. Like, at the quality that it came out. A lot of people might not remember. ChatGPT, when it came out, wasn't that good, guys. Okay, it wasn't that good. Okay, it was interesting because it was a new tech. But it actually wasn't that good. And you can run that now on your PC. Okay? In fact, it kind of sucks. Like, ChatGPT, like, the early version of ChatGPT kind of sucks. Okay? Go and watch any old video on ChatGPT. It kind of sucks compared to what we have now. So, in a year from now, this might look impossible. But a year from now, you're running this now, right? And then by that time, whatever the online version is going to be insane. So, anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. Catch you in the next video. Make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, and yeah.